Good morning, everyone. It's so good to be with all of you today on unceded Algonquin territory to talk about my bill, Bill C-223, and Senator Kim Pate's bill, Bill S-233, an act to put in place a framework for a guaranteed livable basic income. We know currently in the country our social safety net is not looking after people. We need to take radical action if we want to eradicate poverty. And we know there's a direct correlation between poverty and violence. I'm really pleased to be joined today with guests who will talk about how a guaranteed livable basic income will change lives, how the costs of not having a guaranteed income not only costs lives, but costs money. Poverty costs a lot of money. So with that, I'd like to open up the stage to my very honorable colleague, someone I have worked shoulder to shoulder with, pushing to implement a guaranteed livable basic income, Senator Kim Pate.
Thank you very much, Member of Parliament Leah Gazan. It's an amazing privilege to get to work with you as a First Nations woman from Treaty 1 territory. You have been leading the way in so many areas. Canada has committed many times over to looking at this kind of approach, but we've done it in incremental steps. We have the Canada Child Benefit, we have the Guaranteed Income Supplement for seniors, we're talking about a disability benefit that, of course, hasn't yet achieved anything remotely resembling a livable income. But we first started looking at this through the Status of Women Committee in the 70s and through the anti-poverty work that was being done by senators and culminated in the Kroll Report in 1971. So this is not a new idea. This is an idea whose time has come and who we see, as Leah Gazan just pointed out, we are spending now upwards of $80 billion a year keeping people in poverty. Part of what we're trying to do is encourage the federal government to work with provinces, territories, and Indigenous governance bodies to develop a framework that would actually bring people out of poverty and allow people to rebound when they end up in poverty. So it's something that we know will benefit many, many Canadians, and it's something that when I was just in PEI last month and met with the Premier, PEI wants to start it, wants to demonstrate this. So in addition to our bills, and I'm very excited that Leah's bill will go to second reading in the House of Commons very soon, my bill is being studied in the Senate Finance Committee as we speak. And these are two initiatives that we're taking in both chambers to try and push across the finish line the need to really address poverty in this country. So I look forward to hearing from some of the other colleagues who are here, have joined us today. And I'd first like to introduce Mr. Arthur Estrella da Silva, who's a student at Carleton University and the Vice President for Student Issues at the Carleton University Student Association. Arthur.
Thank you so much, Senator. So a few months ago, MP Gazan's office reached out to our organization to request an endorsement of Bill C-223, presenting to us the rationale behind guaranteed livable basic income and how developing a national framework of GLBI could help students address some of the most alarming challenges we are facing in the country right now. In recent years, high costs of living have significantly hindered and prevented students from pursuing post-secondary education on many, many fronts. Lack of affordable housing forces students to allocate significant portions of tight budgets into housing that is oftentimes inaccessible, distant from their colleges or universities, or overcrowded. Record high grocery prices also impose a barrier on students' ability to have a healthy diet, often forcing students to decide between their groceries or various other expenses. As a consequence, we have witnessed a rise in food bank usage across Canadian campuses. In the past year, at Carleton University alone, we have witnessed a 300% surge in the use of food hampers distributed through the Unified Support Center facilitated by our Students Association. Rising tuition fees also impose a barrier on many of those who wish to attain post-secondary education, with an uneven share of this burden affecting international student populations who in most institutions have no guarantee of a fixed tuition rate during their years of study in a program. It is no secret that such high costs also take a significant toll on students' mental health, placing disproportionately greater burdens on marginalized communities and low-income students. Recognizing these challenges, our Students Association delivered to MP Gazan's office a petition to endorse Bill C-223. We understand that GLBI will help students confidently face the social harms being brought upon them by poverty, by creating an avenue that will enable us to change the present instead of glorifying or perpetuating this unnecessary reality. Thank you so much. I would like to introduce now Yemi with the Ottawa Coalition to End Violence Against Women.
Thank you so much. So good morning, my name is Yemi. I am with the Ottawa Coalition to End Violence Against Women. OCTIVA is a network organization of a number of shelters, sexual assault centers, community-based organizations, and grassroots movements. We are committed to prevention, education, service coordination, and movement building. We support Bill 223 in terms of a Canada-wide framework for implementation of a guaranteed livable basic income, because we know that gender-based violence is an epidemic. Here in Ontario, over 95 municipalities have declared it so. We have a crisis, and survivors of gender-based violence are bearing the brunt of that crisis. These are unprecedented times, and we believe that this would address systemic failures and barriers. We want to urge the government to support this bill that would have a profound impact. What would it do? It would support financial independence, free from economic abuse. Basic income provides survivors with a predictable source of income, allowing them to become financially independent from their abusers and those who cause harm. This financial stability can empower survivors to make decisions about their safety and well-being without being reliant on others. Housing. As we know, we are currently in a housing crisis, and guaranteed basic income would mean survivors would be able to access affordable, stable housing. We know that hundreds of survivors are turned away, not because shelter workers, not because organizations that support survivors of gender-based violence don't care, but we have too many systemic barriers that are failing survivors. Stable housing is a core need for many women, children, and gender-diverse folks fleeing abuse. And food security. I'm going to get a little personal here. Last week, I sat in a meeting with 10 GBV workers across Ottawa who talked about how survivors are spending upwards of $100 to feed themselves, totaling approximately $700 a week, because the places in which they are housed right now are motels. There isn't an adequate kitchen, there isn't adequate supports for them. And so this would allow for food security, allowing them to access the support that they need, ensuring that survivors don't go hungry, ensuring that they're not using their own dollars to fill in systemic gaps. Food banks are at 90% capacity. We are in a crisis, and this is a solution. Supporting this bill would mean supporting calls to action for missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit folks. It would be supporting queer and trans communities. Supporting this bill would be a step towards gender-based violence prevention. Listen to Canadians and support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for your comments. Do we have any questions?
Mark Ramsey with the Toronto Star. The government most recently introduced the Canada Disability Benefit, which has similar goals but targeted specifically towards persons with disabilities. How do you expect your legislation and that benefit to interact?
Well, I think it's important to note that, and this has certainly come out very strongly from the disability community, that once again the government is offering something that is not livable. What we're putting forward is a guaranteed livable basic income for all individuals over the age of 18, in addition to other supports meant to meet specific and special needs. The disability benefit that's on the table, that's been put on the table by the Liberal government, is insulting, and it's going to keep people with disabilities in poverty. They need to do better, and there's an option on the table, and that's to put in place a guaranteed livable basic income.
Would you want that to kind of replace that benefit and to do that in kind of a more meaningful way?
Our bill is very explicit in stating a guaranteed livable basic income, in addition to other current and future supports meant to meet specific and special needs. We know that there's costs associated with disability, whether it's medication, whether it's the need to buy equipment to help with physical disabilities. So this would be in addition to other special supports required by the disability community to have a quality of life. We know currently in Canada, 70% of adults with severe intellectual disabilities live in poverty. This is abhorrent and it needs to change.
Please. Sorry. Sorry, please.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and just to add to this, I mean, the bill lays out a framework. One of the things we're seeing with the disability benefit, with the Canada Child benefit, with the guaranteed income supplement, is this incrementalism. And we saw during the pandemic that the government did not have robust systems to meet the needs of Canadians. And so one of the things that could happen out of this framework legislation is bringing together all the parties to figure out how we can streamline the administration of some of these to free up more resources to actually pay out to Canadians, to the people who are currently below the poverty line. So there's great potential for it to streamline those portions and therefore free up resources for more services and supports and more income in the pockets of Canadians.
Like the disability benefit, this legislation is just a framework rather than kind of, doesn't have the details of the regulations placed in it. The disability benefit had a lot of promises to reduce poverty, to kind of cut the gap, and after years of consultations, what came out was what many people and you guys say is a very low amount. Why do you still have kind of confidence in kind of passing a legislation as a framework rather than including the details that you want to see in it?
Well, I think as Senator Pate indicated, this is not a new idea. In fact, in Manitoba, in the 80s, we had a Mincome study that did exactly that, provided a guaranteed livable basic income. You know, people talk about the high cost of program. We've been pushing about to push back against that and talk about the high costs of poverty. I think it's a good financial a program for the government. It has cost savings for individuals, while at the same time ensuring that everybody residing in Canada can live in dignity. I know that during the Mincome study in the 80s, what they spent up front for a guaranteed livable basic income, they saved in healthcare costs, higher graduation rates, better mental health of the community, and people were able to pursue areas that they were never able to pursue. And the other, I think one of my respective colleagues, Yemi, spoke very eloquently about, you know, if this government is really serious about ending gender-based violence, if this government is really serious about in their promise to implement all the calls for justice of the National Inquiry, including Call to Justice 4.5, then they have already committed, in fact, to implementing a guaranteed livable basic income. Every single party in this House has been very clear and explicit that they support all the calls for justice. Call for Justice 4.5 calls on the government to put in place a guaranteed livable basic income for Indigenous peoples and all other Canadians. We're just pushing them to stay true to their promise and immediately implement a guaranteed livable basic income. Thank you.
Thank you.